Hello and welcome to another YouTube exclusive of the Smash Accept podcast. I'm your host, Michael Royer. You can find me on Twitter at DynastyDadFF. Joined as always by my main man, FF Snoog. And today what we're going to do is bring you just an episode that Dane Brugler from The Athletic released his latest mock draft 2.0. And a lot of people are trying to tell you that this 2025 class is not talented, is not good. He has 11 skill players of quarterback, wide receiver, tight end, running back going in round one, as well as 5 offensive tackles. If that's not what gets you going for fantasy football, I don't know what does. I mean, you got 2 quarterbacks in there, multiple running backs going round one, wide receivers. Snoog, I'm excited. I mean, this mock, it's the next layer to the process, right? Like we've all started to talk about who these prospects are. And when you and I are doing that, we're trying to give people an idea so they don't, one, overcount things they see at the combine, overcount when a guy gets, the landing spot that they want. We're trying to give you that information. But when you start seeing landing spots, Snoog, and Dane's an awesome guy in the community, it starts to put it into perspective.
Yeah, I always say this to everybody. Nobody knows anything until the landing spots and draft capital come into play. Right now, we're just evaluating talent as prospects, kind of what their production profiles look like, some of their metrics, how it stacks up against the NFL, and some predictive indicators of successes for that. But I'm excited for this draft class just because it's one that's being undervalued. So whenever there's an undervalued draft class, I always think that there's a good opportunity for us as Dynasty Fantasy Football managers to take advantage of that and build teams through a weaker class through that lens because people don't want picks. When people don't want picks, you can get picks easier. So I'm excited to jump into this. Like you said, 11 guys in the first round, some juicy second round landing spots as well to skyrocket players up the board. So I'm excited to jump into this loaded running back and tight end class as this mock draft represents. So let's jump into it.
Yeah, well, a lot of guys keep saying, Dad, Snoog, why are you guys jumping into rookies so early? And it's like, we're trying to prevent you from realizing that Clyde Edwards-Helaire is not a good running back. The guy gets that right landing spot, and you guys jump all over it. We're giving you all the tools that you guys need in the Discord. Snoog's got his rankings. I got mine. You guys can check that on patreon.com. We're going to have that on both, above and below us here before the show. So with this, jumping right in, this mock draft, Ashton Junty goes number 20 to the Broncos. Ideally, I would love to see him go number 12 to the Cowboys. But, man, Snoog, 20 to the Broncos. The Broncos offense is an ascending offense. You got Bo Nix there. You got Sean Payton. You got, a decent wide receiver core. And you throw Ashton Junty in here, and that's one of those spots where it is a completely wide open running back room. And Ashton Junty belongs right in that top 3 dynasty running backs. And this is a room that's going to absolutely just utilize him. He's going to be utilized in the pass game. He's going to be in the run game. I could see him getting 20 plus touches right off the bat and being a top 3 dynasty running back day one. So the 101 doesn't change at all. There's very few landing spots that are going to change Ashton Junty, but it's the 102 here where, we start to look at some landing spots. We start to try to figure things out. I'm taking Junty at 1. What are you considering here at 102?
Yeah, I think the 102 here has to be Ted McMillan going to the New England Patriots. I mean, we saw the promise with Drake May, tons of talent there, building an offense there in New England, new head coach Mike Vrabel coming in. He's used to those big physical wide receivers that win downfield. That's what Ted is. I mean, he coached A.J. Brown for a while there in Tennessee. Not that Ted McMillan is A.J. Brown, but he kind of plays that downfield, vertical, big wide receiver style of play. And I think that that's going to really help Ted McMillan's development, especially coming in, being the clear-cut wide receiver 1 in this offense, getting a ton of talent day one. The first 2 landing spots, I mean, I think this is easy. Like Junty and Ted McMillan, both good, very, very good prospects. Junty especially goes to a coaching staff in a situation with a guy that literally had Alvin Kamara, who's a dynamic receiving back that was dynamic and playing with Mark Ingram as well. They were both tearing it up. I think that landing spot there with a good offensive line and a clear-cut wide open room there to take all the carries and take all the touches is phenomenal. And same with Ted McMillan. They're both going to wide open landing spots, wide open situations where they're going to dominate from day one. That's what you're looking for at the top of the rookie drafts for these 2 guys. And they're both getting first round draft capital. Ted McMillan going 4th overall is very high. So love those picks there. The interesting one is next because you and I are talking about what if there is a first round running back that isn't Ashton Junty. We get one here. Dane mocked Caleb Johnson. So sell us on Caleb Johnson. Yeah. We did that show on him earlier on this week when it was Smash Running Back Week, and we're big fans of his game and what he can do after contact.
What I'm excited about here is not Caleb Johnson going to the Vikings or Shedeur Sanders possibly with the Raiders. Cam, what I'm excited here, because you know how I play Dynasty, baby. It's about trades. And I get to this 103 spot. And if I'm on the clock, I love Caleb Johnson. Caleb Johnson go to the Minnesota Vikings, where, Aaron Jones has been a guy that has been marred by injuries across his career. This is probably the twilight of his career. I think they would be in pretty even touch spot right off the bat. But what I'm trying to do here, Snoog, and you know what I do, is like I'm taking this spot. I have the 103. Somebody needs a quarterback. I don't necessarily want to own a lot of shares of Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward. And it's not that I don't think they are good quality quarterbacks for the NFL, but I feel like they're quarterback 12 to 18. They're never going to be quarterback ones. I feel like they're the kind of guys where 2 years ago I was doing the same thing with Anthony Richardson and Bryce Young, where we're adding on to these guys, where if I could add a first to this 103 and get up to Joe Burrow during rookie fever for a guy that's rebuilding, or if I could tier down. Ultimately, when you start to look at tiers, that's so important when you do your rookie draft, right? So if I'm drafting right here, I think I'm taking Caleb or Shedeur. It's back and forth depending on my need. But I mean, Caleb Johnson's going to give you immediate production here. And that's the guy that I really like here in this situation. There's another running back here who's really close. But I think ultimately I start to look at the draft board and I say, man, guys at 4 and 5 need a quarterback, and I don't want a quarterback here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, you know what? 103 for 105. We do a first, second flip. I get Caleb Johnson probably falling to 4 or 5, and they take their Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward. Let them take that risk, because this class at the quarterback position is not like 2024. Drake May's not in this class. Jaden Daniels isn't in this class. Caleb Williams isn't in this class. Let's be honest.
Bo Nix and Michael Penix.
Bo Nix, Michael Penix, and J.J. McCarthy are barely in this class. I mean, I have those guys very similar, especially I have Nix over both of these guys. I have McCarthy over both of these guys, and I think Michael Penix is right there in that mix. And I think I'm ultimately going to avoid the quarterback position. We're going to dive deep into that next week, but I'm passing on. I'm taking Caleb Johnson here unless I can trade back. So you got the 104 here. Is it Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward for you between the two quarterbacks?
If this was real rookie drafts and I was the one with my dynasty roster picking, I could promise you I would trade back to the 106, 107, get two of my guys here that I love that we'll talk about shortly, and get a first on top maybe in 2027 or 2026. Aim for that, whatever it is, late, mid, I don't care what it is. I just want it. But I'm going to go with Shedeur Sanders here. He ended up going 6 overall to the Las Vegas Raiders. The reason why is they fired their whole coaching staff. I just feel like there's more promise here than there is with Cam Ward going to the Titans first overall. I think with Brock Bowers, Jacoby Myers, his weapons from right from the get for him. There's a decent offensive line. They're going to probably bring in a new coaching staff. Ben Johnson's a name that's been kind of fluttering around and rumored around to be a Raider. So if that happened, they draft Shedeur Sanders, then there you go. Shedeur Sanders is Ben Johnson's Jared Goff or Dak Prescott or Geno Smith plus. That's kind of the ceiling I see for Shedeur. But in like a 6-point passing format like this is, we're doing 6-point passing, full PPR, super flex, 12 team, just your generic, pretty competitive dynasty league formatting. You got to go with the quarterback here just because that's where the value is. But the right play here, I think, would be avoiding these two QBs in these situations and moving back to 6, 7, 8, maybe even 9, getting another first and another draft class further down the road, tiering off and getting more assets to build out your roster and get one of these stud running backs that gets good draft capital. But we talked 104, 105. It's going to be Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, wishy-washy, whoever you prefer at this point. I haven't fully dove through, so I don't know who I'd prefer. A lot of people that I trust, their evaluations are on the Cam Ward wave, so I'm excited to kind of dive through that. At first, I thought it was Shedeur for me, but, I mean, they both hit 4,000 plus yards and 38, 40 total touchdowns this season, so they both balled out. But sell us on the 106 that we have here, this landing spot. Yeah. I think you could argue him over Caleb Johnson right here with this landing spot.
See, I was big time on the Shedeur boat as well. I think Cam Ward has shown tons of explosive plays. He's gotten better every single year. I think the Tennessee landing spot, a lot of people see the comp of Steve McNair in his game. I don't quite see that yet. I got to dig deeper into his tape, but I think you're right that 4-5, you could even argue at 3-4, your quarterbacks are going to go there. But man, another landing spot here, Snoog, where arguably You could take him as high as 103 because this is a guy we keep saying the running back position between Hampton and Travion Henderson and Caleb Johnson, it's going to be landing spot. It's going to be where they go. And in this particular mock draft, Dane Brugler has Travion Henderson going to the Cowboys in the early second at pick 44. This is a smash spot. We want one of these running backs to go to the Cowboys, you know, and it might be an even juicier landing spot than what we saw with Caleb Johnson going, you know, late first to the Vikings. You do have to pay attention to that when a guy goes late first as opposed to mid-second. But this is somewhere where Travion Henderson is in a dream landing spot. You have to think the Cowboys obviously going to get a new coach. Dak Prescott's back. CeeDee Lamb's back. So Travion Henderson will be a dynasty RB1 if he goes to the Cowboys. He's a guy that is going to be a steal at 106. I think he is going to ultimately go in front of a lot of quarterbacks because this kind of shows what kind of value that he has. And we get really close here. I mean, like for me, that tier of 1 and 2 don't change still. It's still Tet McMillan's behind Junty. The 3, 4, 5 are very similar. 6 through 9 here, man, I keep calling this the smash zone. But if I'm coming away with Travion Henderson at 106 or the guy you're going to take here at 107, I'm feeling great about my rookie draft because I'm like, I loaded up. Yeah. I got tons of mid-firsts. Who's the guy you're taking here at 107?
Yeah, let me just touch quick on that Travion pick because it got me excited. When I saw this mock, I was like, yes, this is what I need to see because a lot of the NFL scouts around the league are really starting to come alive on Travion Henderson. I think after last year, the injury concerns, the durability issues, we all thought he was going to be the RB1 last year. He didn't. We all questioned that decision. But he was firing this year. Like he had 3 years out of 4 with over 900 plus rushing yards, 1,200 as a true freshman, 980 plus this year, splitting backfield with Quinshad Judkins, another stud back in this class. He also had 3 seasons with 10 plus touchdowns total. So this is a guy that produced every single time he was on the football field. When healthy, he's one of the best running backs in any draft class. And his explosiveness and his dynamic ability in the receiving game is going to bring tons of fantasy football value right away, especially to a team like the Dallas Cowboys that have that identity as the running back. Like that's a history piece of the Dallas Cowboys is their running back position. I think Travion can bring that back to life, but let's transition into the 107. I get my guy, my wide receiver 2 in this class, Emeka Egbuka, first round draft capital, 21st to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm assuming if they make this pick, George Pickens is gone. Or they don't want to pay him. I know there's a lot of issues there with George Pickens, but even if George Pickens doesn't go, that team needs a volume hog wide receiver underneath that can be a consistent guy like an Amon-Ra St. Brown, a JSN, one of those type of guys. I think Emeka would honestly help Pickens, and I think Pickens would help Emeka because Pickens is a 4, 5, 6, 7 target guy that's going to get 80 to 100 yards and maybe score. Emeka is going to be a guy that gets 10, 12 targets, 7, 8 receptions, 80 yards, and can maybe find that end zone. So they complement each other well. I think you need 2 wide receivers in the NFL now to thrive. I'm also assuming Arthur Smith is gone because he's been interviewing for head coaching job somewhere else. So this is a pick I made with assumptions. Obviously, we'd have clarity by the time of the draft. If not, then I would transition to maybe the running back that went 37th overall in this mock we'll get to, or Luther Burden, who got crazy good draft capital. But right now, I'm sticking true to my analysis. Wide receiver 2 in the class for me, Emeka Egbuka, a guy that had another one, went back to school, injury-ridden junior season, came out firing 980 plus yards, 10 plus touchdowns. That leading receiver right there behind Jeremiah Smith, the guy that went toe-to-toe with the best of the best at Marvin Harrison Jr., Jeremiah Smith. Dude was always producing no matter who was playing alongside him. So I'm a big Emeka fan. Dad, sell us on who you're taking here at the 108.
This is crazy to me, right? Because we're going to talk about the 108 versus 109.
I know you're going to do it.
And
I know you're going to do it.
You know what I'm going to do here. Luther Burden goes 12 to the Cowboys, but I'm taking Amarion Hampton to the Raiders at 37. And I mean, it really depends on what kind of team we have here. But this running back class, if we get, he reminds me so much of Josh Jacobs. Like this is Josh Jacobs 2.0 in that Raiders system. Shador Sanders is there. Brock Bowers is there. I feel dirty not taking Luther Burden. I feel dirty not taking Emeka Egbuka. But like this is the year where we're like, we've been telling everybody last year you stack up on the wide receivers, and this year you fill in with these running backs. And if you did this in the big years where we're talking 2017, 2020, like 2017, you weren't saying, you know what, I'm going to pass on Christian McCaffrey, I'm going to pass on guys of that nature. You were like, no, I'm loading up on these guys in this class. And I think this is a game changing class. As much as I think Luther Burden has crazy potential, and the fact that you're even talking about a guy like in Luther Burden who was 1,200 plus yards 2 years ago, he's had 8+ touchdowns in every single season, and someone that you're like, dude, this guy has Debo Light, Jaden Reed plus type potential, and you're going to get him at 109 as a top 12 pick. That's hard to even argue. Like they're so fluid here in this process. But I'm taking Omarion Hampton. 1,600 plus yards, number 2 in all rushing yards. I think he's someone that at the next level in this offense, I think is going to really excel. So you get Luther Burden at 1.9. That's just that should blow your mind.
Yeah, that's great value here, especially for a guy. I mean, coming off a underperforming junior season, but after that sophomore season, I mean, he gained a ton of steam. Grades out amazing in a lot of analytic models and processes, but 1,200 plus yards as a sophomore in this Missouri SEC offense, 90 plus receptions, 3.2 plus yards per out run. I mean, this is a guy that, like you said, he's that Jaden Reed plus type wide receiver, a guy that excels in space, can win downfield well, tracks the ball extremely well, dynamic with the football in his hands. He's not Deebo Samuel, because nobody's Deebo Samuel. Deebo Samuel is literally like CMC playing wide receiver, but he has like that yak upside like a Debo. Like he's not going to run through you and run you over like Debo, and he's not as explosive. But I think his long speed's a little bit better than Debo's is, and I think that he's a little bit more shifty and nimble than Debo. Like he has a lot more elusiveness. So I think he's just one of those guys that would slide in right alongside CD, kind of playing that similar role as CD. So they'd both just be dynamic playmakers with Dak Prescott coming back, hopefully healthy. Travion Henderson in this draft going to the same team would help bring the run game alive. So I think overall the whole Dallas Cowboys offense would take a big boost from this, especially because they just fired Mike McCarthy. So they're now in the hot seat, figuring out who their next head coach is going to be, figuring out who the play caller is going to be over there in Dallas. So I'd be very, very happy with Emeka, Luther, or Omarion Hampton here with these 3 landing spots at draft capital. Honestly, if I was 107, I'd probably trade back to the 109 and take whoever fell, because I think that Emeka to the Steelers isn't my favorite. I'd love to see him go maybe 20th to Denver, but Genti does in this draft, or maybe see him go to the Texans at 25, pair him up with CJ Stroud again. But I would love any of these 3 in this mid to late first for how cheap these picks been going too. Like they're a lot cheaper, but tight end 1, he's all yours. Sell us on him. I don't love the landing spot, but the draft capital is premium.
106 through 110. That's the smash zone. Last year we talked about being 107 to 110. And guys were like, well, Dad, that's when you're starting to get out of those range. And 107 to 110 was, Brock Bowers was in there every single time. Brian Thomas Jr., Ladd McConkey, like you were getting those guys in all of your drafts. And Snoop, we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about it, because Travis Hunter goes 3 here to the Giants. And the only reason we passed up on him, and it's not that we're not drafting him, because let's be honest, if the Giants come out and say, you know what, he's going to be a wide receiver for us, all right, dang, go and pick 3. I think he goes all the way up to 106, maybe even over some of the quarterbacks. If they say he's just a wide receiver, I'm starting.
You know how I love Travis Hunter. I'm just nervous because we know who their quarterback would be in this mock draft. They take Jalen Milroe in the early second, so it'd be Milroe trying to put a football throwing in the same direction as Malik Neighbors and Travis Hunter. I feel like it would be a disaster, but Travis Hunter's top 3 in this draft if he's full-time wide receiver.
And anybody that wanted to, they're going to definitely bring that up. But if he's a corner and he plays a handful of downs every game, you're going to start. Then we're starting. I can't, based off this mock, and this is starting to bring reality to things, is can I take him over Luther Burden if Burden goes 12 to the Cowboys in a good offense with a good quarterback? I don't know. I don't think I can do that if we're talking he's going to be part-time. I can't take him over Ibuka that's going to the Steelers, Hampton that's going to the Raiders. I think I would take him still here above Warren. But for me, this is actually a dream landing spot for me is the Indianapolis Colts at 14. I think they need a security blanket. They need somebody that is going to be able to do it all. I think Anthony Richardson is, struggled this year. Like, to say that is a massive understatement, but he needs more weapons around him. Downs, Pittman are not the same level talent that we're talking about when we're talking about Tyler Warren. Tyler Warren immediately I have as a top 6 dynasty tight end. I was at one point where I was like, you know what? He's a tight end 1, but outside of McBride, Bowers, Kittle, Laporta,
you could argue him tight end 3 or 4, I think, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not putting him over Laporta yet, but I mean, I think we're in that area talent wise. He's going to be up there. And then this is where I wanted him to go, is where 111, we have Colston Loveland going to the Chargers. Now, I think Warren is a better tight end, but I think Loveland's landing spot here puts them in the same tier where you're like, damn, like I'm going to get 2 top 8 dynasty tight ends in the late rounds of my first round rookie picks. I'm loving that. I mean, in tight end premium at 0.75, that is just insane value.
Especially because he'd be going and playing with his old head coach and Jim Harbaugh, which would be really interesting with Justin Herbert, just a guy that turns everybody around him into a fantasy football value and reception hog. So that's my pick. My next pick would be definitely Colston Loveland in this tight end premium 0.5 tight end premium mock draft, just because, I mean, he's a damn great tight end. Like, I know I like Warren a lot better, but Colston Loveland, 20 years old still, a guy that had like 600 of Michigan's receiving yards this year, which doesn't sound like a big number. The next highest receiver had like 250. So he dominated the receiving yards for Michigan. When JJ was there, he was great. He had like 680 or 700. I wanted to go Judkins here, but Judkins doesn't go in the first 2 rounds of this mock draft. So I just put in round 3 draft capital, and I don't know what landing spot it would be. So Judkins, it's just hard to take him in this draft mock, but as long as he goes in the 3rd round, I would take him here. But Loveland here, I think, feels like screaming value at the 111. Him and Warren are both stud tight ends, going to both come in as top 8 dynasty tight ends in my rankings, as long as they go in the 1st round. Warren is a lot more of that Trey McBride, reception hog, can move him all over, can play him in the backfield, play him in line, play him in the slot. Loveland's more that athletic, traditional tight end that's just going to win downfield and win down the seam. And I think that him and Harbaugh and Justin Herbert would just be a phenomenal landing spot. So I think that's good value there. Talk about the 2 guys that we have here at the 112.
Without an actual landing spot for Judkins. So if he goes round 3, but he goes to an offense where he's going to get usage right off the bat, I think he jumps way up. If he doesn't, this guy Trey Harris going to the Texans at 58. Tank Dell's going to miss the entire season. Stephon Diggs is likely gone. Trey Harris, 5.15 yards per route run this year. Like we said before, number 1 on PFF score against man, number 2 against zone. Trey Harris, if this is no non-tight end premium, is the 110. He is definitely the 112 here. I think it would be Judkins would really have to go to the Chargers. If Judkins went to the Chargers, then there's no debate here. Then I think that's where we're starting.
There's a couple spots for him.
And I think the other guy that's also considerable is, we had this in years past, and I think he's ultimately, if he goes in this area, he's going to go in the mid-second. I'm going to do it because this is what I did with Jalen Hurts back in the day.
I knew you were going to do it.
I was taking Jalen Hurts in the 2nd round of all my rookie drafts. And if Jalen Moreau goes all the way at early 2nd to the Giants, I'm still going to draft him. I'm going to draft him in that early to mid-second because you know what? You made fun of me last year for taking Michael Penix Jr. in that same area. You did, and it's perfectly all right. but it's process over results. Do I love Michael Penix Jr.? No, I think he's a poor man's Tua Tagovailoa. But he had one flashy game at the end of the year because he had 3 pedestrian games, 1 flashy game. And right now people are paying the 105 for Michael Penix Jr. in this class. So it worked, right? You took a guy
process over results
early to mid-second, and it was like, even there was an opportunity where we did the same with Will Levis, We were taking him in the mid-second. He got a couple starts, so you were able to get maybe a 26 first. I think you're going to have an opportunity with Milroe where you take him 204, and then all of a sudden you're like, all right, cool. Now I'm going to flip him for a first as soon as he starts or flashes at all. So this was kind of fun because now we're adding things. We did our wide receiver video this week. It's wide receiver week. We did our running back show. We've been trying to give you guys daily YouTube content on top of what we do in our Patreon Discord, on top of what we do on Twitter, on top of the podcast that we have on Apple and iTunes. So make sure you guys subscribe on all those different things. Wanted to give you a quick recap. 101 doesn't change. Ashton Juncy to the Denver Broncos. Snoog, that has me excited. Like locked and loaded in the same tier as Bijan and Gibbs if this happens.
Yeah, we talked about it earlier. Clear landing spot. He's going to be the guy from day one with Sean Payton, a mastermind offensive head coach. Bo Nix, tons of promising there. Good offensive line. He's going to probably see 300 plus touches year one. He's going to be used in the screen game like crazy. Amazing landing spot. It's not the prettiest, but I could get behind seeing Ashton Jundy running around in those orange uniforms. I think it would be pretty cool.
12 to the Cowboys is what I want to see. Like I'm gonna blow my mind. You know what I mean? We still gotta find. That's my birthday weekend. You and I got to go to the draft, man.
Yeah.
So Tet McMillan to the Patriots. Honestly, as a New England guy with that Boston hat on, you got to love this. I mean, this. Yep. I put him as my dynasty wide receiver 13, with the assumption that he goes to the Patriots, and I was getting mocked for that today. But I feel like this Drake May to Tet McMillan is a slightly lesser version of Joe Burrow to Jamar Chase. It's not a poor man's version, but it's that light. It's that light. Like they're going to be
light.
Okay,
I think it would be whatever. I think it's a great landing spot though. Clear cut guy there. He's going to get 140 plus targets year one. It's going to be like Trevor Lawrence to Brian Thomas Jr. Like that type of connection. I think. It would be really fun. I love that landing spot for Tet. I think that's good for him. And with Mike Vrabel, they're building something new there.
Yeah, we talked about Caleb Johnson to Minnesota. We love the landing spot.
First round draft capital.
I think first round draft capital for a running back. It really just is it. It would be. I mean, and I think you'd have to be a little bit patient year one, but year two, you're looking at a guy that's honestly going to has top 8 dynasty running back potential.
I was going to say, where would he fall for you there? Probably in that top 10 to 8 to 10 range, right? Because he's a guy still 20 years old, comes in
he's young.
With the Minnesota Vikings or Kevin O'Connell. Oh, my God. That would just be whoever goes to that Minnesota Vikings team, whether it's round 1 or round 2, same with the Dallas Cowboys as a running back, sign me up. I don't care. As long as it's one of the top 5 guys in my rankings, sign me up.
Shador and Cam Ward going 4 and 5. And Snoog, this is why I keep telling people to trade for 103 is people are going to move them up there even over Tet. They're going to just be like, oh, I got to get a quarterback. I got to get Cam Ward. He went 1 overall. Let's move him up there. I got Shador went to the Raiders. I got to move him up there. I do like the Shador Sanders spot, especially for Brock Bowers, because Shador is very composed and accurate quarterback. I think that would be great for him. Travion Henderson at 106 feels like the steal of the draft.
I'm so excited about it.
If he goes in that early second to the Cowboys, that whoever that is, if that's Hampton, that's Judkins, that's Henderson, that's Caleb Johnson, they move way up on the board for sure. That's exciting. Still Ohio State Steelers. Ibuka would be the wide receiver 1 there. We're thinking Pickens is out, and I like that. Burden, the complimentary wide receiver 2 for the Dallas Cowboys. Man, the Cowboys really loading up on skill position players in this draft.
They need
Travion Henderson and Burden. Oh, for sure. Omarion Hampton, I think. Getting Omarion Hampton in this area of that, we have him at 108. That blows my mind because this is where one of those spots we want. He is, a lot of people's RB2 in the class. If he goes here, he's in that. All 3 of those guys are in that same tier. All 3 of them.
He's a great player, right? Like we talked about it on the show. Like just because we don't think I don't think he's like this consensus RB2 elite prospect. He's still a good prospect. Like I comped him to James Conner type running back, like a Nick Chubb light, and people are like, "Oh, you're disrespecting him." Like he's a guy that could be like 1,000-yard plus rusher a few times. Be a guy that's going to score maybe 8 to 10 touchdowns in a season. He's gonna be a guy that's good and relevant in fantasy. He's just not like Travion Henderson can very easily be better than him. Caleb Johnson can very easily be better than him. Quinshad Judkins too. He's not a consensus RB2 type talent. Like some of these other guys have a better case of being a consensus RB2 type talent. So anyway, stacked running back class. Anyone in the top 5 going day 2, it's going to be a first-round draft pick in these mocks. Tyler Warren, Colston Loveland in this tight end premium format, first-round draft capital, smash values, smash tight end prospects. Honestly, I'd say other than Brock Bowers, I'd say they're both better than Kincaid was as a prospect. I think they're both. I think Loveland's a Michael Mayer plus prospect, like better Michael Mayer type. And I think Warren's just right. It's like Bowers is way up here. Warren's down here with like the McBride, like those Laporta type prospects. So they're just both wishy-washy, both stud prospects. And then just jumping into that, finishing off that 112 range. That's where it's going to be fun. There's so many. I think the 112 in this draft class is going to be so many different people.
And Travis Hunter's going to go in here. I mean, Travis Hunter,
yeah.
depending on what people think. Hunter. And we're like, I'm not going to own any Travis Hunter shares. Just like 2 years ago, I didn't own a single Jameson Williams share just because I didn't like the idea. You know what I mean? And that's what's nice in Dynasty. That doesn't mean that you're not going to, during your rookie draft, get to know your league mates. Snoog and I talk about this all the time at Smash Accept. If you get a guy and he goes to the Giants and you know you're talking to a Giants fan, you know he's going to go 103. You know, like he could go 102. You're going to see guys that are, Deion Sanders fans, guys that were big into Colorado. You're going to know how your league mates draft, where they're going to draft these guys. And I think this kind of gives you an idea of where you can trade into. This gives you some pockets here where it's like, oh man, I love things in that 106 to 109 range. I'm going to push in there now and try to do it cheap, because right now, Travion Henderson at 106 is easily worth a second more than what I would say Tyler Warren is at 110. Maybe even a late first more than what Colston Loveland is at 111. But right now you can buy that cheaper. You can give, you can go ahead and you can throw out Tajay Spears in a third plus your 111 to get to 107 in some leagues, because people
I think the best picks. I think the best picks, if I'm going to buy today, are 105 through 107, because I truly think Shador and Cam Ward go top 5 in the NFL draft. They're going to be locked in as 103, 104, or 102, 103, 104. Between that range, you're going to get the RB2 of this class. You're going to get wide receiver 2 of this class. You're going to get RB3 of this class. You're going to get Tyler Warren. You're going to get all these studs. If you want, I'll own 0 Cam Ward and Shador Sanders. And just because that's my process, I build off count cornerstone quarterbacks. Anyways, that's for a different show, but I build around cornerstones, draft running backs and wide receivers. But this was fun. Like we're going to do this more. This is going to be something we do based off all these NFL scouts and what they're putting out for mock drafts. The closer we get to combine and into the NFL draft, it's going to be more accurate. And we're going to make mock drafts kind of designed around this, because right now nobody knows anything.
Yeah. And this is the part where we're just talking about insulating. So, I mean, I'm not actively trying to trade up too high, but if a guy wants to trade from 106 or 107 to 102 and add his 26 first or 27 first, you start to insulate. And now all of a sudden I get Ibuka and a first for McMillan, or I get Henderson and a first. It's gonna be a fun offseason. If you guys want to learn more of those strategies, more of the principles that we do at Smash Accept, patreon.com/Smash Accept. We got the link in the bio. We got it all over the place. So thanks for tuning in, guys, and enjoy the process.